Hello guys, welcome to Online Web Tutor presented by Profotech Solutions team. I am Sanjay. We are learning CodeIgniter Framework Beginners tutorial. This is our partner 44. Inside this video session guys, we will discuss about how can we use Ajax in CodeIgniter. And also guys, if you're a beginner to this channel, please don't forget to subscribe and keep watching our previous video sessions to get the clear concept about CodeIgniter Framework tutorial. So what basically Ajax is stand for? So Ajax means asynchronous JavaScript and XML. So in simple terms, there are several definitions you can find over Google or while doing surfing. So inside this video, what basically we are going to do, we are going to make some request from our client side by means of any form. We are going to submit that form by using a button click. After getting the request to the server, we will see how can we respond from the server and send back to our response to the client. These are the things that we are going to see inside this video. So back to our editor, open up our controller. So let's say that I'm going to make a controller something called Ajax run.php. Let's say that this is PHP tag. Declare our class, so class Ajax run CI controller. Let's say that public function, or let's say simple something called my form. Now inside this method, we are going to call a view file. So let's say this load view, and inside this view let's say my form, or let's say my simple form. So if I copy this view file name, save this file first, back to our views folder, and if I create that file something called my simple form.php. Now inside this form we are going to create a simple form. So let's say form, and inside this form, first of all, let's attach some of the attributes inside this form. So let's say method should be post. Let's say ID of this form something called frm simple data, and also we have to attach the action parameter. So we are going to submit this form by using our Ajax, and we'll get all the data to our server by the call of Ajax. Okay, so inside this case, I'm not going to pass any of the action. So let's say JavaScript void. Now form declaration is almost complete. Let's add some of the input elements. So first paragraph tag. Inside this, let's say label. And inside this we are going to pass something called name. And right here I'm going to pass input type text. Let's say input type text. Name should be something called txt underscore name, and the placeholder I will attach something called let's say name. Okay, so copy this paragraph tag, pasting it here. Let's say email, input type email, txt underscore email, and this is email. So all the two fields we have done. Also copy that. Let's paste for mobile numbers, so it should be mobile. Let's say text txt, let's say mobile. Copy this, or let's say simple mobile here. Now all the three inputs we have made inside this form. Now finally we want a button, so let's say button. Let's say submit, and inside this button we are going to declare something, let's say button, because by default inside form this button should be a type submit button, but while clicking on that button the form will be submitted according to this action URL. But this time we are going to submit this form by means of Ajax. Also you can submit that form by using submit button also. How it is possible? By using called prevent default method of JavaScript, where it restricts or bans the default behavior of a form. So let's say that this is the button and we are going to pass the ID. So let's say btn submit form. Now all we have done about the settings of this form. So if I copy this ID, copy this button ID back here, and let's say that I'm to make a script tag to write our Ajax calls. So inside this script tag, firstly, let's say function, and this is all about the syntax declaration of a jQuery. So firstly, we need to include call jQuery.js file or jQuery.min.js file. So back to browser, go inside Bootstrap forms. Either you can download or link a CDN from anywhere. I preferred about w3schools.com Bootstrap form, and if I click anywhere inside this, like try it yourself, inside this it will provide about jQuery.min.js link. As we can see here, you can download CDN link from anywhere over Google. So go to editor, let's say that script, and I'm going to pass called src, or I think that we have copied the script tag from the first step. Okay, now inside this syntax declaration of this jQuery, there are several methods actually provided by jQuery to complete our Ajax request. So what basically those methods are? Either we can use call $Ajax method. Inside this, we can pass our attribute inside this object format. Or instead of this method, we have two more options like $.post. Inside this post, the syntax is something called URL, something called our data, and finally the callback function, which basically takes the response from the server. Now inside this Ajax, what is the syntax we have? We have something called URL. Here we have to pass, here we have data, here we have called data type, and finally there are several attributes basically this Ajax method contains. Now called success, this will contain our callback function, and finally also we have something called method type. So if I type method, and here we can pass either post or get method. These are the two methods. So either we have the third method, something called $.get method. This is all about the global Ajax method. If we pass about the post type, either we can use this, or for the post request we can use this. If we pass like get here, so either we can use something this syntax, or by using this get method. The same syntax we have inside get, something called URL, data, and the callback function. And here is the response parameter. Now we are going to use any of one of the method from this list and complete our request. Let's say that we are going to use this post method because we are going to submit our data by using this post method. So back to our jQuery code. Let's say that $post. Now inside the first parameter, we have to pass the URL. Inside the second parameter, we have passed to our data. So actually we are going to complete this request on this button click. So let's say that this is our button ID, and we are going to complete this request on the click event of that button. So this is how we are going to attach the event listener on the button click. Copy this post method and paste right here. Now while clicking on this button, firstly we are going to take all the form data from this form and submit to a server. So copy this form ID back to our code, and let's say that where post data, something called this is the form ID, and we are going to serialize all the data. So serialize, it will convert all the data concatenated with ampersand symbol, something called URL string values. Now we are going to submit this post data to here, and let's say that function and here is the response parameter, and simply this time I'm doing console.log. So let's do response. Now here we have to pass the URL. So for that, back to our routes.php, and let's say that route submit Ajax form. This is the route name, and it will use something called Ajax run. Here we are going to make the method something called submit Ajax data. Put semicolon here, copy this method name back to our controller. Let's say that public function method name, and simply we are going to receive all the data and print for now. So let's say print r, and let's say that we are going to receive all the data inside this request variable. We have two variables available here, something called post, because we are going to submit all the data inside this post variable. Also we can use get here, but remember we haven't used about the get method inside this form. Inside this form we have used the post method. So inside any of the case like post and get, we can use the global variable as request here. In that case, if suppose we don't know actually about the post or get request type, so in that condition we will use something called request. Okay, so if I save this file also, and also copy this route name back to our view file, scroll down, and I'm going to pass here something called PHP. Let's say echo something called site URL, and inside this we are going to pass our route name. So before using site URL, make sure that you have loaded the URL helper, something called URL. So back to our helpers, and we have loaded URL, because while loading this URL it will provide the function something called site URL and the base URL. So successfully guys, we have made our Ajax call about the files. Let's run in our browser. So if I copy this route back to our browser, go to our here, and let's say index.php and paste this route. And I think that this is not the correct route actually we have opened. Back to editor, and if I copy this route, pasting it here, because we haven't made any route to open this form. So let's say my form, and here if I type let's say Ajax form simply to call our view file, and this is all about the method. So go to browser, let's say that Ajax form. If I press submit, now this is the method, this is the functionality, or this is the layout we have made. But actually before that these lines are executing. Where these lines are, basically in our previous video session we had learned about the hook session. So if I back to our editor, close here, and if I open about the hooks, so back to our hooks folder, here is the file, and if I comment all these lines, save this. In our previous video session, this is the section we have actually completed. Reload this page, and now all we have gone, and also we have some error, something called on line number 18. So again, if you go here, open up my hook, and in line number 18 this is the mistake we did. Save this file, again close this file, back here, and now this is the form we have made. Now before submitting this form, let's inspect and see our request. Go to network section. Let's say that I'm going to pass some data, something called online web tutor. Email is something called online@gmail.com, and mobile number we have something dummy value. Now inside network section, you can see how request is traveling from the client side to the server side and get response from server. So if I press submit button, as we can see here, we have made a request something called submit Ajax form. Now this is the route name we have passed right here inside this post URL, as we can see here. Now back to browser, click on this link. Now inside this link, if you click on that, or if I made something like this, just here, now inside this link, here is the header section. Inside this header section, as we can see, this is the post. This is the URL we have made. Status is 200. It means it successfully get all the response from the server back here. Now inside this form data section, as we can see here, we have the parameters, something called txt name, txt email and txt mobile. From where these parameters are coming? These parameters coming from this form element, because these are the name attributes. So while submitting this form via Ajax, it picked about the name attributes and their corresponding values what we have filled right here. Now if I click on view source, if I copy these things back to our slide and open a new tab, so this is the serialized data we have made with our request. All the data and the value is separated by ampersand symbol. This is the serialized data format. Back to browser. Now go to preview. Inside this preview section, it will preview the data or response we are getting from the server. Response, and now all the same data we are seeing. So back to editor. So while completing this request here, we can do what we want. If we want to save all the data we are getting from this request to our database, we actually will do by getting all these data right here. If we want to make some query to our database, instead of taking like insert, update, delete and anything you want, you can do everything by getting these all data from the request and send your response something here inside this. So right now we have just console that. Back to our browser, go to console, and this is the data as we can see inside this console. But remember, we only did about the console part. This is not the right way to actually send our response to the client side. How can we send? Back to our here, and if I make comment of these lines, let's say that echo JSON encode. We have to encode our data, and inside this JSON encode, let's pass an array and something, let's say status equal to 1. Message is something like, let's say that request has been done, and the data section, let's say data, it will contain all the data we are getting inside this request variable. So save this file. Back here, again reload this page. Let's pass online web tutor, email is something dummy value, and this is the dummy mobile number. So if I press submit button, as we can see here, this is now encoded data we are getting inside this console. So how can we parse this data? Back to editor, go to our Ajax call, and let's say that where data equal to dollar or something parse JSON. Inside this parse JSON method, we are going to pass our response variable we are getting here inside this function. Now if I save this file, or before save, if I write console.log data, save this, reload this page. Again if we pass data something here, dummy mobile number, press submit. Now inside this status object, we have successfully converted our response to the successfully JSON object. Now inside this object we have three properties called status, message and the data. So accordingly we can get our data. So let's say that we are going to take console.log and the data part, something, this is the data part. So data dot data, because this is the data actually contains all these three values. So inside this data we are going to fetch only. So if I save this file, back to browser, reload this page, again we can fill the data something called online web tutor. This is the dummy email and this is the dummy mobile number. Click on submit. Now successfully, as we can see that this is the whole response. At the first line is about the data. In the second line we can see that the data.data. It means that inside this data we have picked this data property. So this is all about the video session of how can we make Ajax request from our client side to server side and get response from the server and parse at the client side in CodeIgniter. So inside this video session guys, if you have any doubt, then please drop your comment. I will give my reply as soon as possible. So for this video session guys, thank you for watching and have a great day.